What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Actually Good Coffee podcast. Alyssa and I are still in the trenches with this newborn baby, so today I'm going to be releasing what was a really good coffee community exclusive. This video that I've converted into a podcast was geared more towards the coffee drinker who was looking to start their own business or just gain some additional insight into the industry. I would highly suggest, if you are one of those people, to join this community before we get to the point where we start charging for entry. I really think this is going to be a big thing that we focus on in the future, and I hope that you all find this valuable. This is a part 1 of 2 series, so if you enjoy this part, I will release a second, and if not, then I will go back to what we had been doing before. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Let's get into the topic of coffee sampling / Q grading and what I believe is the key to tasting coffee. I received my Q grade certification for Arabica coffee. There's also Q Robusta. That's the 2 main varietals within the coffee tree. I think there's about 120 total varietals of coffee, but those are the 2 main ones. So on March in 2024, this past year, on the official CQI Coffee Quality Institute, you can find me there. There's about 9,000 Q graders worldwide, so it's a very niche industry. A Q grader is basically somebody that has dialogue with the coffee importers / farmers, or actually works at the farm level to basically, in order to set the price of the current harvest crop. Farms, producers, roasteries, green coffee importers look to hire Q graders to add some more weight to their resume and show that they have an unbiased expert tasting their coffees. Think of it as like an extra layer of security. It's like this inner group or this inner circle of people that are providing these grades with coffees and can speak to certain language to justify their grades and the price that they have set for those crops. When contracting a new coffee, you obviously need to taste it first to see if you want to bring it on. Q graders are able to grade the coffee on a score of 1 to 100. And basically anything specialty grade is going to be above that 80 range, so 80 to 90 range. I doubt you're going to find a coffee that's in that 90 plus category. If you are, kudos to you. I have not found that one yet. But yeah, anything specialty grade is 80 or above, so that's mostly where you're going to be working with. If you find anything lower than that, something is definitely wrong with the coffee. So, but here's the breakdown. I'm actually going to post the PDF of the SCA scoring system, the CQI official scoring sheet that you need whenever you're grading these coffees as a Q grader. But in this sheet, there's 10 different categories, all worth 10 points each. There's fragrance and aroma, which is the dry and wet smell, flavor, aftertaste, acidity, body, balance, uniformity, clean cup, sweetness, and overall. In an ideal situation, you'd have a Q grader at the farm with the importer and at the roastery so they can all provide and communicate their score with each other. If that sounds like a lot of different categories, it is, but once you taste about 50 to 100 coffees, you get used to it. When you're all getting the same score within 0.25 to like 0.5, it means you're all calibrated. That's what Q graders are always shooting for. They're always trying to be calibrated with one another. If not, something is off and the price of the crop most likely needs to be adjusted because there must have been a quaker or a defect within the coffee, something that stuck out, and that actually means that the price needs to, or the grade needs to come down a bit, because that means that something is wrong in that situation if everybody did their scoring correctly. But here is why I think that grading system is bullshit within reason. The first reason that I have is that the CQI scores only grade the grade of the potential of the coffee, so not the ability of the roaster you're buying it from. So when you provide a grade to a certain coffee and you roast it a specific way, essentially what roasting is like it can turn into the covering up of certain flavor profiles. So if you take the same coffee, you give it to 2 separate roasteries, I actually doubt you're going to be able to even tell that it's the same coffee in a blind test. A lot of roasteries roast their coffees different ways. Now it's becoming a lot more similar, we're finding, which I don't think is necessarily a good thing, but there's only one way. There's only so many ways to skin a cat. But the point is that if you're roasting coffee different ways, you're bringing out certain flavor notes, you're muting others, depending on certain energy transfers and heat shifts at different time periods. You're going to bring out a different coffee, essentially. And it's just going to be very difficult to consistently provide that same score that you received at the tasting level of that coffee. So that's my first. The second reason is I believe that this process has a extremely high bar to entry. So in order to gain an understanding of what you enjoy, you need to pay thousands of dollars in order to maybe pass your first test. If not, get ready to pay again. There's also very few resources out there that can provide you with any practice material to actually study for the exam. I took a class one time with this guy named Joey Stazone, who is the owner and founder of Cafe Creole. Great guy. Just like an all-around great human being. If you are looking to take his courses or take the Q grade exam, I would highly suggest taking his practice exams or practice courses. The New York Coffee Fest has his courses. Those are where I took them in New York at the Javits Center. They're usually around March. He has a great class, and one of the things that I learned in his class was this idea of nostalgia. And I believe that idea is the key to tasting coffee. Big reveal. I think nostalgia is an incredibly powerful tool within any industry, because anyone that can find comfort in certain things that remind them of a better time, they're immediately going to be drawn to it. And I think that the same rule applies when tasting coffee. So rather than looking at the coffee as a scale that demonstrates improved quality, you should instead focus on the pronouncement of its characteristics. As I've said before, there's about, I don't know if I said this before, but there's basically about 60 different flavors that you find within coffee. There's roasted peanuts, there is molasses, maple syrup, green vegetables, peas, honeysuckle, apricot, apple, tropical, different types of flavor notes that you find when tasting coffee. And when you can identify a flavor with a memory rather than a specific flavor note that they're like trying to beat senselessly into you, you have a much easier time with remembering that flavor when you're tasting coffees in the future. It's almost like second nature at that point, because rather than trying to warp your mind and assuming with this flavor as being good or this flavor as being bad, you're now saying, okay, well, this reminds me of that. This reminds me of a time where, my mom used to make me lunch in second grade. And, I remember that she would always pack me this certain thing. And this tastes like second grade school lunch. Like I remember putting that as one of my things. Didn't really necessarily taste like, that specific flavor. It just tasted like that memory to me. And I remembered every single time I found that similar flavor, I think it was apple or something, I would say second grade school lunch. And it was immediate. It was like, took me back to that time and I remembered. And again, this idea of nostalgia is it's so powerful, and you could really take it and run with it. I mean, Nintendo, the video game company, that's their entire marketing ploy. They're just completely recycling same ideas within their video games and their products that they put out. And they're using nostalgia as this incredibly powerful marketing tool with their consumers. And they're able to pump out the same game every single year, the same Mario game, the same Pokemon game, the same any game. And they have a huge fan base, one of the strongest fan bases within that industry. And I would attribute all of that to the nostalgia you get from that feeling of playing their video games. And again, you could take that idea and run with it. That could actually be a problem for some people. You can just not grow up and just always stay in this like childlike state of just wanting to feel that same warm, fuzzy feelings instead of, I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent, but there's a video on YouTube. There's this artist called Meat Canyon. He made a video on the idea of nostalgia. It's pretty twisted, but it's like that same similar idea of how you can use that memory and keep it with you and apply it to the things that you're doing and remember it and respect it, or you can let it just like overtake you and whatever. We're going to get off of that topic. So focus on the pronouncement of specific coffee flavors when you're tasting coffee.